Welcome back, NFL fans. So the good news is that 8 teams have advanced to the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. The bad news is that 6 teams have been sent home. Now, I want to focus on those 6 teams in this video, talk about the future of those 6 teams, the teams that lost: the Raiders, the Patriots, the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Steelers, and the Arizona Cardinals. We'll talk about those 6 teams, kind of give like a brief summary on what's ahead for them. Some teams have brighter futures than others. We'll talk about that. Leave a like, it would help a lot, and let's get into the video. All right, so we'll start in order here. We'll start with the Las Vegas Raiders, who lost 26-19 to Cincinnati. They have a lot of questions to be answered here. The head coaching position, first and foremost, is Rich Bisaccia, your future head coach for this organization. Now, I have heard the rumor that Jim Harbaugh may have some interest with the Las Vegas Raiders. That's something that would be fun. I could definitely get behind that as an NFL fan. I would want to see what that outcome would be like. Harbaugh, Las Vegas. There's a lot of appeal there. So I kind of want to see that happen. Now, with Derek Carr, who is a good enough quarterback. He's not great, not elite. We know that. He's a good enough quarterback. And he has 1 year left on his contract, a $19 million cap hit, which is team-friendly for a guy like him. So you probably keep around Derek Carr for at least 1 more year. Now, one thing the Raiders have to do is improve the offensive line. I mean, outside of Colton Miller, their left tackle, there was nobody on the offensive line that was that great. Of course, this was a team that lost majority of its offensive linemen. They traded Rodney Hudson, traded Trent Brown. They let Gabe Jackson go. So Their offensive line has to be fixed first and foremost. Their first-round pick, Alex Leatherwood, had a very bad rookie season. Had to go from tackle to guard. Didn't even play well at guard, so that's not a good situation. You got to find a GM, too. I just remember Mike Mayock is now not the GM there anymore, so they have to find a GM, a head coach. But I don't think this is a team that's ready to fully rebuild just yet. You wait 1 more year. You play out Derek Carr's $19 million cap hit for 2022, and if you guys don't make the playoffs next year or don't make a run, you start it all over. That's really what it comes down to. The Raiders have nice young pieces. You know, Max Crosby comes to mind, Darren Waller, Josh Jacobs, Trayvon Merrick. But at the end of the day, like, this is not a Super Bowl ready team. I think we knew that already, of course. So if it's me, though, I'm giving it 1 more try. I'm kind of go all in for this one-off season. The Raiders right now have $39 million in cap space, so they have room to sign guys. I would try to go for more 1-year deals because, once again, you don't want to put yourself in a position where you have a bunch of bad contracts. The Raiders should go all in for 1 more year, maybe sign some veterans, maybe trade a pick or 2 for a veteran guy with 1 year left on his deal, and just see what 2022 brings you. If they really put up a great season, then hey, it was worth it, but if not, then you know for sure it's time to rebuild. So for the Raiders, there's no clear answer. We got to see who the head coach and GM is, but if I'm them, I'm giving it at least 1 more try before Derek Carr's contract is up. Next, we have the New England Patriots, who got destroyed. A 30-point loss to their division rival Buffalo Bills on the road. Now, the Patriots are interesting because they had a rookie quarterback, but they also spent the most money in the 2021 offseason. So they signed all those free agents. Some of them worked out very nicely. Of course, Matthew Judon comes to mind. Kendrick Bourne had a nice year for them. And then some guys kind of missed. You know, Jonnu Smith did not earn that money so far. Maybe he does next year. Hunter Henry was a hit, by the way. That was a good signing by them. But, you know, they spent all the money, and you have Mac Jones, rookie deal. A rookie quarterback's never been to the Super Bowl, so it wasn't a surprise they were a first-round exit. But losing that badly just leaves a bad taste in your mouth for entering the offseason. If you're the Patriots, you have an offensive line to compete right now. We know that. Their weapons, though, is where you can use an improvement. You look at the Patriots wide receivers. I don't see a wide receiver 1. I like Jacoby Myers, fine player. Nelson Aguilar, big play guy. Kendrick Bourne, red zone threat, big play guy. N'Keal Harry, more of a failed first-round pick. He plays a decent role as a possession receiver now. But you don't have like an incredible weapon on that offense. Even Hunter Henry, good red zone threat, but not an incredible weapon. Like, you want to go in the draft, I feel like, and take a wide receiver in the first round. I know the Patriots have not had good history with that, but I would look to sign a wide receiver 1. I know a guy like Allen Robinson may hit the market, maybe sign an Allen Robinson type guy, but the Patriots need more firepower with that offense. I like their running backs. You know, Harris is a good player. I like Ramondre Stevenson a lot, the rookie. And you might get James White back next year. I don't know what his contract is off the top of my head, but he was out for most of this year as well. So your running back room is not that bad, but you need a wide receiver 1. I think Jacoby Myers, to me, is your prototypical pretty good slot receiver, right? Not really an outside guy. Kendrick Bourne is an outside guy, more of a wide receiver 2/3. You don't have a wide receiver 1. You definitely need that if you're the Patriots. Now, looking at their defense, there's a lot to like. You could argue they might need a cornerback 2 opposite of J.C. Jackson. Jalen Mills is a decent player, but they play him everywhere. I don't look at him as like a natural cornerback 2. So you look at their defense, I mean, there's a lot to like, of course. Their defensive line, very good against the run, as we know. They have Matthew Judon, who I think had 12.5 sacks this year. But what I want the Patriots to have is another guy opposite of Matthew Judon. So for me, if I'm the Patriots, my 2 biggest things I want this offseason, well, 3. Number 1 is Mac Jones gets better. That's number 1, of course. But number 2 is get a wide receiver 1 and get a really good edge rusher opposite of Matthew Judon. If you can do those things, you're giving yourself more of a chance to compete in the 2022 season. Now, it all depends on the development of Mac Jones. If Mac Jones does not get much better from his rookie year, well, the Patriots probably hit their ceiling. But if Mac Jones really develops in year 2 and reads defenses better, knows where blitzes are coming from, is very accurate with his passes, and just plays the way that Tom Brady did for so many years, then hey, I mean, there's a chance, of course. So, you can't blow it all up. You sign too many guys. You already have a rookie quarterback. You can't blow it up if you're New England. You got to make some improvements, look to build on this roster right now. Take advantage of having Bill Belichick while you have him, and just try to compete in 2022 by making some upgrades to the roster. Next, the Philadelphia Eagles. And look, I enjoy watching more football, of course, but some of these 7 seeds they're not good teams. I mean, the Eagles throughout the season, the best team they beat was the Saints without Jameis Winston. So, I mean, I guess congrats to them for making the playoffs, but I don't know, it wasn't much of a game. Once the Bucs went up 14-0, you knew it was over. So anyway, the Eagles lost that one 31-15. Now, their offseason's a bit tricky because, it just comes down to, can you make that big quarterback upgrade? They have 3 first-round picks, I believe. They have picks 15, 16, and 19, so some great draft assets here. Now, everyone's going to say trade for Deshaun Watson, and that probably is their best hope, honestly. Like, if you can trade for Deshaun Watson with this team, you can go places. I don't think the entire Eagles roster is that bad. You have offensive line pieces. Yes, you might need a right guard because Brandon Brooks cannot stay healthy, unfortunately, but you might need some defensive line help. Some guys are getting older, of course. You look at Brandon Graham, he's getting older. Fletcher Cox is getting up there as well. So you need some defensive line help, a right guard. You need some outside linebackers because the guy in the middle, what's his name? TJ Edwards is a pretty good linebacker, but the guys next to him are not that good. So maybe get some linebacker help. The secondary was actually pretty good for Philly, but I do think they had 2 guys on 1-year deals, if I remember, Steven Nelson and Anthony Harris. So you may have to re-sign those guys as well. But Philly's not that far from being a contender. If they really get themselves a Deshaun Watson level quarterback, I mean, they're pretty much in it. Like, I'm not going to pick them to win the Super Bowl, but like, they have a chance at that point. Now, also, if I'm Philly, I'm looking to make an upgrade at wide receiver. Look, you got to move on from Jalen Reagor. That relationship it's done. It can't really be fixed at this point. We saw the muff punt. We know the Justin Jefferson jokes. It's just not going to happen for Jalen Reagor in Philly, unfortunately. I think Reagor could be good somewhere else, but it's just not going to happen here. So you have Devontae Smith, who had a very good rookie season, and you have Quez Watkins, who's a fine wide receiver 3, a big play guy, and you got Dallas Goedert at tight end. He's one of the better tight ends in football, top 10, I would think. So you have that going for you, but if they get themselves a real wide receiver 2 opposite of Devontae Smith, you're going to put yourself in a good spot. And if you add that and add Deshaun Watson to that team, then hey, I mean, the Eagles are back, honestly. So can you get Deshaun? Maybe not, because he wants to play for Brian Flores, apparently. You're not going to fire Nick Sirianni after 1 year of bringing a team that was tanking to the playoffs. So, the Eagles, they were impressive to make the playoffs this year, I must say. We saw Javon Hargrave improve as well. That's another thing, but they're a pretty talented defense for the most part. There's pieces offensively I like. I mentioned Devontae Smith. You have your left tackle, Mailata. Kelsey's getting older, but still playing at a high level. You have Lane Johnson, the right tackle, older, but still playing at a very high level. So this team's not that far off, but they need that quarterback. I just think we've seen enough from Jalen Hurts to know that he does not have the arm and can't really scan a field the way a franchise quarterback needs to. He's very good running. We know that, of course, making some plays out of nothing, but there's a lot of Jalen Hurts plays where he'll just basically bounce out of a clean pocket, and it's like, you didn't need to do that, So Jalen Hurts is fine for a backup quarterback, a guy like that, but just, he'll be more of like a Teddy Bridgewater type guy, I feel like, for most of his career, but just not a franchise quarterback, in my opinion. I like Jalen Hurts. I got nothing against the guy, but like, even as a Giants fan, I don't hate him, but it's just like, he's just not a franchise quarterback in my mind. So if you can get that quarterback upgrade, whether it be through the draft, whether it be trade for Watson, you got to do that, because the Eagles right now, I just don't see them going that far if Jalen Hurts is their signal caller. Next, we have the Dallas Cowboys, who lost 20 23-17 wild card exit, which is something you really hate to see. Really hate to see it with Dallas. But in all seriousness, I mean, I don't know what else you can do to this roster offensively. You know, you have your offensive line, right? Your offensive line is great. You have a tight end in Schultz that played very well this year. You have 3 amazing wide receivers. I mean, Gallup's a free agent. That's a big one, of course. Michael Gallup is a free agent, but even Cedric Wilson behind him, for the most part, had a pretty good season. So, you know, you don't need to sign a wide receiver 3. You could draft one, of course, but you don't need to sign one for big money. So Michael Gallup could be a big loss for that team. Did unfortunately tear his ACL towards the end of the year. So maybe he doesn't get a big contract. Maybe Dallas gets him back on a 1-year deal. I don't know, but I'm sure somebody will pay Gallup, but we'll see. For Dak Prescott, Zeke Elliott, look, they're under contract forever. Like, you can't do much. You can't get out of Zeke's contract right now until like 2024 or something, or 2025. It's a ridiculous contract. Dallas should have never done it, but that's a shame. Dak Prescott, you paid a bunch of money to. He's not going anywhere, but there's just not much you can do on paper to this Cowboys offense, and I don't think Kellen Moore is that bad of a play caller. I mean, of course, Dallas, the reason they lost was they screwed themselves with penalties, and they couldn't stop the run. I mean, that's pretty much why they lost, of course. So you look at Dallas's roster up and down, it's a pretty damn good roster, but for some reason they always come up short. Mike McCarthy's a coach I was never a fan of, but I personally would move on from McCarthy. I never would have hired him in the first place, but I would definitely move on from Mike McCarthy if I were them. They might lose Dan Quinn, their defensive coordinator, to a head coaching job, so we'll see about that. But just looking at Dallas's defense, I mean, there's some changes that can be made. Their once really stacked linebacking group of Jabril Cox and Jalen Smith and Micah Parsons and Van Der Esch is not so stacked anymore. It's basically Micah Parsons. I mean, Van Der Esch is not the same player he used to be. Jalen Smith's on like the Giants practice squad these days, and Jabril Cox tore his ACL. So that linebacking group may need to be upgraded, of course. Now, their secondary, I mean, say what you want about Trayvon Diggs. The turnovers were great this year, but overall did not play that well at corner. I think he's a decent player. He's not terrible like some people say. He's a decent corner, but not he's not a cornerback one in my opinion just yet. Maybe one day. Opposite of him, Anthony Brown, fine cornerback. He's a fine cornerback too, of course, but that defensive line, defensive tackles are what needs to be worked on for this team. I mean, for the most part, DeMarcus Lawrence, when he played this year, was a very good player. Randy Gregory, I mean, ton of penalties in that playoff game that killed him, but for the most part had a good regular season. But defensive tackle-wise, they need help. Neville Gallimore, I think, was a 2nd or 3rd round pick last year. Has not worked out so far. You have Carlos Watkins, who's not that great. You have Odighizuwa, who was a rookie this year. But you need some run stoppers. Like, I don't think stopping the run's the most important part of today's NFL. We know that, of course. But if you can't stop the run whatsoever, like Dallas can't the past couple years, that's an issue. And they need to find a run-stopping defensive tackle. Like Damon Snacks Harrison in his prime would have been the most perfect player for this team, but he's not there anymore. So they got to find themselves that run stopper. If they do find that, that should help the defense out very much. You have DeMonte Casey playing free safety. You could do better there. So Dallas's defense needs improvements. Their offense is basically like very good on paper, but you're stuck in that Ezekiel Elliott contract. You're stuck with Dak Prescott. You got to live with it. So that's pretty much how it is right now. You might lose Michael Gallup, but their offense on paper is stacked. Their offensive line on paper is stacked. So there's no excuses there. Their defense, though, you can use upgrades at cornerback possibly. Use some linebacker upgrades. Maybe look to move on from Van Der Esch. I don't know. Maybe get another free safety and get some run stoppers. That's the big thing for this Dallas team. So if you're Dallas, you're not rebuilding. This roster's too good to just rebuild with. You need to go all in for next year as well. Maybe get some free agents. Dallas is in a bad spot cap space wise. It's not like they can sign that many guys, but if you can make some smart 1-year deal type signing and sign some cheap veterans, then hey, maybe you'll find yourself in a better spot. But I can't say I was too surprised about Sunday's outcome with the 49ers and Cowboys, but if you're Dallas, you're close, but your coaching sucks and you can't stop the run. That's pretty much what it comes down to. Next, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers, who were unfortunately like the sacrificial lamb of Wild Card Weekend, just playing on the road at Kansas City. They were like 12.5-point underdogs. They lost that game by a score of 42-21, so at least they put up 21 in Big Ben's most likely final game. Nothing official yet, but I think we're 99.9% sure that was Ben Roethlisberger's final game. So looking at this Steelers roster, you start with the defense. They have a pass rush that's very good. Alex Highsmith, you have Cam Hayward. Stephon Tuitt, low-key, was a massive loss for that team, but nobody remembers that. But Stephon Tuitt's a big loss for that defense. And, of course, T.J. Watt. So you have at least 4 guys right there that are very good on the defensive line, can get to the quarterback, so you're fine there for the most part. Now, cornerback position, it could be better. Joe Hayden now has to be near his mid-30s at this point. Cameron Sutton, that cornerback, had a bit of a down year. You could look to upgrade there at cornerback, too. Linebacker position, I think they traded for Joe Schober. He was decent. Devin Bush really just didn't play that well this year, unfortunately, who was a former first-round pick. I think Pittsburgh traded up for him, actually, so that has not gone very well for them. Minkah Fitzpatrick, we know who he is. Terrell Edmonds is probably not going anywhere, so you have your safeties for the future. So, for the most part, this Steelers defense, they could look to upgrade linebacker a bit, maybe cornerback 1, I guess cornerback 2. I don't know what Joe Hayden's contract is, but maybe add another cornerback there, of course. Now, a big problem with this Steelers team is the offensive line. I don't look at one guy on this team right now and look at them as a big future piece for this offensive line. There might be some future pieces, I don't know, but there's nobody I'm looking at and I'm like, oh, that guy's a keeper for the next 5 years. They need a lot of upgrades on the offensive line. So that's a concern, of course. You're probably going to lose Juju Smith-Schuster in all likelihood in free agency. Maybe comes back on a team-friendly deal, but I think he might walk somewhere else. You still have Chase Claypool, still have Deontay Johnson. Pat Freiermuth was a really good rookie for them at tight end. And you have Najee Harris, who had a pretty good year at running back. So your offense has weapons, but your offensive line definitely needs some work. And finding a quarterback is also very important. So when you go into an offseason needing an offensive line, an entire offensive line, and a quarterback, that's not very easy to solve in one offseason. Now, could Pittsburgh be in the trade market and trade for a quarterback? Yeah, I could definitely see that happening because they don't have the highest draft pick. I'm sure there's somewhere right now in the early 20s. I can look real quick. They actually have the 20th pick right now, actually. Look at that. So 20th pick for the Steelers in this draft. I don't know what quarterback's going to fall to 20. You can pray that Malik Willis falls that far, but he's not really a day one type guy, so you need like a day one starter there for Pittsburgh. If somehow like Derek Carr was available, I could see them making a play for Derek Carr, but I just don't know how possible that is right now for them. So if I'm Pittsburgh, I'm probably focusing on building the offensive line right now, get that right. Maybe just have some stopgap guy at quarterback for 2022 and then try to go all in for 2023. I don't know what else they can do at quarterback, really. There's no great free agents. The best free agent quarterback, in my opinion, is probably Jameis Winston. So, there's not much you can do in free agency. And if you want another quarterback, you got to trade for him or maybe draft one. Maybe Kenny Pickett, a guy who plays at Pitt. Maybe that's an option for them. Maybe they trade up for Kenny Pickett. I don't know. But we'll find out if they go rookie or veteran or stopgap guy at quarterback. That's always interesting. But the Steelers don't have the worst future outlook, but it's not that bright either. It depends if they get the quarterback spot right. Can they get themselves a left tackle, a right tackle? That stuff's important, so they got to figure that out. They got to make some improvements at linebacker, of course, even cornerback too. So there's stuff to do here. It's definitely a laundry list, but it's not impossible, and we'll see who the Steelers quarterback is in 2022. Next, we have the Arizona Cardinals, who lost last night by a score of 34-11 to their division rival Los Angeles Rams. That was a tough look there for Arizona. It was not really a game. They got off to a 21-0 deficit, so it was rough. There was no DeAndre Hopkins, but looking at their injury list, there wasn't many other guys outside of Hopkins that missed that game. It wasn't like they had 5 or 6 starters out. They were just missing Hopkins. Yes, that's a massive loss, but to lose by that many points is not what you want to see there for an Arizona Cardinals team. Now, it's weird because Arizona coming into this year, if you rewind back to August, they were not supposed to be a playoff team. I think they might have been like an 8 or 9 win total team, but playing in the toughest division of football. Seattle has a down year with Russell Wilson getting hurt, of course, and some other things, but the Rams and the 49ers, they played better this year. I guess technically the Cardinals had a better record, but the 49ers were better built for the playoffs than the Cardinals were. So they're a tough team to diagnose because I just don't think it should result in Cliff Kingsbury getting fired. You can't move on from Kyler Murray. You shouldn't move on from Kyler Murray. There's not many massive changes you can make to this Arizona Cardinals team. In a way, they kind of went all in. They traded for J.J. Watt. They signed A.J. Green. They traded for Rodney Hudson. They made moves to win now, but of course, Vegas didn't really respect them too much coming into the year, but they got off to a very hot start, 7-0 or whatever it was, 6-0. And it just seems like every Cardinals season goes the same way. It's Kyler Murray plays phenomenal the first half of the season, then gets slightly injured, and then Kyler Murray's not the same guy anymore. It just always seems to be the Cardinals' case, at least the last couple years. So, number one, you got to keep Kyler Murray healthy for an entire season. That's number one. I don't know how you prevent that or how you prevent that from happening, but the Cardinals' offensive line, it's not as bad as it used to be, but there could be improvements. Max Garcia at right guard, you can move on from him. Kelvin Beachum at right tackle has been fine. You could do better, but he's been fine. I think he signed a big contract there too. Actually, I was wrong. You can get out of that Kelvin Beachum contract. It's only a 2-year, $4 million deal. So you can move on from him if you want, but you got to find an improvement, of course. This is a really good offensive tackle class, apparently. So maybe you find a franchise right tackle in this draft here for the Cardinals. Now, one of the biggest needs for this Cardinals team is cornerback. Marco Wilson is a guy I liked out of Florida. I have no problems with him, but he had a lot of inconsistencies throughout the year. Definitely had some high moments, though, I must say. Robert Alford's on the IR right now, not much of a future option or a future piece for this team. You have Byron Murphy Jr., who's a decent player, hasn't really lived up to the draft position. Antonio Hamilton's more of a special teams guy, so you kind of need some cornerback help. You know, Patrick Peterson left. He was declining anyway, so I get that, of course, but you need that cornerback one, that guy who's going to shut down number one receivers, and the Cardinals just don't have that right now. Your safeties are fine. Jalen Thompson, Budda Baker seems like he's fine, thank God. That was a scary-looking injury yesterday, but he seems fine right now. Your linebackers, I mean, you have pretty good ones, young ones, pretty good ones. They have Jordan Hicks still, who had a big contract. They might have to cut him to save space. We'll see about that. But Zaven Collins is a young guy, first-round pick from last year. Isaiah Simmons, a first-round pick from a couple years back. So they have guys on this, linebacking core that are good players with bright futures. And the defensive line is pretty good too. J.J. Watt still plays at a high level when he's healthy. It's just he's not very healthy very often, so that's the unfortunate part. You have Chandler Jones when he plays, very good player. We know that. They have Jordan Phillips, who at most times is a good defensive tackle. It's just really tough to diagnose what's the problem with the Arizona Cardinals. I just wish it was an easier answer, but I just feel like I'm up here just saying nothing at this point, because you look at their roster and outside of cornerback and maybe some offensive line help on the right side, it's not that bad of a roster. Like, this team should be better than a wild card exit. So that's unfortunate. And the James Conner contract worked out perfectly for them. I think it was a 1-year deal, 2 at most, but maybe re-sign him as well. You have Hopkins when he's healthy, Christian Kirk as a wide receiver 3. You have A.J. Green, who maybe they move on from. We'll see. Zach Ertz, of course, a tight end. So just on paper, it's a very good team, but just for some reason they came up short, but they couldn't stop the run last night. Too many big gains for Odell, Cooper Kupp, guys like that. The turnovers killed them, of course. And really, I just think it comes down to Kyler Murray. Like, if he plays at that MVP level, which he does play at for the first half of the last 2 seasons, the Cardinals look like one of the best teams in football. But after Kyler Murray sustains that small injury that he usually has midway through the season, the Cardinals offense is just not the same. So, they're an inconsistent team. They got their doors blown off by the Detroit Lions. They lost in this playoff game by a lot of points. Like, they're just too inconsistent. So, they lost to the Green Bay Packers, where it was just Aaron Rodgers and no receivers, basically. So that was a bad loss for them. I don't know. The Cardinals are just frustrating. You feel like they should be better than they actually are, but there's just something missing there. I wouldn't fire Cliff Kingsbury, but he's going to be on the hot seat next year for sure. And Kyler Murray only has basically 1 year of a small cap hit on his rookie deal. After that, it's the 5th-year option. His cap hit gets much higher. The Cardinals right now have $16 million in cap space. They can make more 1-year deal type signings to really go all in for 2022. So if I'm the Cardinals, I'm doing that. I'm giving out money to more veterans, come in and play cornerback, maybe get Patrick Peterson back if that helps, I don't know. But just get some 1-year deal veterans in here, use that cap space wisely, and try to go all in for a Super Bowl in 2022. They went all in for this year, but there still is more cap space left over because Kyler's on a rookie deal. You have guys leaving. Devon Kennard's contract's up, I believe, so you have guys leaving. There's going to be more money to spend, and if the Cardinals spend it wisely on talented veterans that still have stuff left in the tank, they could hopefully make a Super Bowl run. So the Cardinals are not in a bad spot, but it's just a confusing situation. So anyway, that'll do it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope I didn't offend any fan bases out there. I hope it was an enjoyable video, and I will talk to you guys next time.